Gene.
Hey, Bill, I am excited today. We're doing
Yeah,
something a
man.
little bit different. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, it is. So, this is a special episode of the Bioactive Nexus, the first in a new series that we're starting that is called the Bioactive Breakdown. So, this would be an appropriate time to do our little video intro.
Yeah, indeed. Boom. There you go. The Bioactive Breakdown. So,
Yes, anyway. So, again, this is the Bioactive Breakdown. So, what's the Bioactive Breakdown, Gene? Let's walk
so
it through
the
for everybody.
Bioactive Breakdown is taking an opportunity to do a little deeper dive into a very specific topic, but not just that. It's not just Bill and I doing a little deeper dive. We have guests who have an expertise in these areas that we're bringing into the mix
Exactly.
to help us do that breakdown. So they're going to share their information with us. It's going to be, I think, a much more comprehensive and interesting show as a result. And that is the Bioact. And our first one, Bill, what is this, our first one on?
Well, the first one is going to be on omega fatty acids. I think
Yeah.
everybody knows this ingredient. So let's just give a basic overview, Gene, for everybody, and then we're going to bring in our guests and we're going to deep dive on the science, latest research their companies are doing. But what are omega fatty acids? They're polyunsaturated fats that are essential for numerous bodily functions. They cannot be synthesized by the human body, meaning that you must be obtained through the diet. So what we eat or supplements or that sort of thing. So really important there. And these fats play key roles in cell membrane integrity, inflammation regulation, production of signaling molecules involved in various physiological processes. So that's
Yeah.
uh, that's the definition of omega fatty acids.
And there are different types of omega fatty acids. Now, oftentimes
Exactly.
when we hear omega fatty acids, we immediately think omega 3 fatty acids because that's sort of
Exactly.
more promoted. But there are really several types, and they're categorized by the position of their first double bond in their chemical structure. So, for example, omega 3s, omega 3 fatty acids, the first double bond is located at the third carbon from the methyl end of the molecule, hence omega 3. Omega 6, the first double bond is at the sixth carbon. Omega 7, first double bond is at the seventh carbon. Omega 9, guess where? That's right, first double bond at the ninth carbon. We're not going to get too deep into the, and that's probably the extent of the chemistry we're going to cover on that, at least to some extent.
Yeah.
But speaking of
And
chemistry, Bill, chemical structures,
yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
Right. And Gene, you know what? I was going to show chemical structures on the screen, but then I realized that only I will probably understand those.
Yeah, probably.
So, uh, so yes, that is my PhD's in organic chemistry or natural products chemistry. But again, Gene already outlined the different types, and it's basically if I could give just a visual, right? It's a chain of carbon atoms connect together, hydrogen, and then there's an acid group, and it has an acidic side and a fatty side. So if you've seen oil and water and salad dressings, you know you've got this long chain, and the thing that is an acid functionality on the omega fatty acid is going to be have an affinity for water, and the rest of the chain, which is just like carbons, it's like fats, is like the oil, right? So for examples of omega threes, you would have heard probably these names. So alpha linolenic acid, excuse me, ALA. You've probably heard that. You've heard of EPA and DHA. I can pronounce the chemical names, but I don't think that's important. But again, EPA and DHA, you've certainly seen that in supplement facts panels. Those are polyunsaturated, meaning they have multiple double bonds. But again, the first one's at the third carbon, as Gene said. And EPA, a really important distinction here, by the way, EPA and DHA are not found in plant sources. So, for example, alpha linolenic acid is an omega 3, but that comes from plant sources like algae, for example. So, we'll get into that later.
Well, and of course, EPA, DHA, you mentioned
Yeah,
a plant source. There is an algae source, just so people know.
it is. Omega 6 is linoleic acid, that's La, and arachidonic acid, that's AA. Those are common omega 6s, right? And actually, omega 3s, like omega-3s, they're polyunsaturated. What that means is they have some double bonds between carbon atoms there is all that means. Then you have omega-7 palmitoleic acid, which is a common omega-7, right? And then omega-9, which is oleic acid. It's a well-known omega-9 like omega-3 and 6. And it's not considered essential because your body actually can synthesize it. That's an important distinction on omega-9s.
Right. Now, what some of the common sources of these? Well, listen, omega-3s, we kind of already know, everybody knows. Probably if you ask somebody, where do you find omega-3 fatty acids, you'd get a number of people that would say, well, it's in fish like salmon. And that's true. Salmon, mackerel. You can also find some in flax seeds and chia seeds, walnuts, and algae. Algae is the one of the bigger ones being used today. And omega-6, of course, that is present in most of what we call our vegetable oils, corn oils, soybean oils, canola oils, nuts, seeds. Omega-7 is found in macadamia nuts, sea buckthorn oil, and certain specific fish oils, my personal favorite. And omega-9, listen, the major source there is olive oil, avocados, almonds. I get probably most of mine from olive oil, which I use quite a bit in cooking.
I get mine from olive oil and cooking because that's what I cook with. And being in Mexico, we get plenty of fresh avocados, man.
I bet you do. Lucky you.
Lucky me. Yeah, we get to eat a lot of avocados. So let's talk about just real briefly some of the health benefits. We're going to deep dive in this with the guys when we bring them on board here in a minute. But again, omega-3s are known for heart health and brain health and anti-inflammatory. So they have these sorts of benefits.
Yeah.
Omega-6, skin and hair. They're pro-inflammatory but essential. So it's really important to call out that omega-6s do play a role in immune responses, but they also play a role in inflammation control.
Which I just might add, which is why it's very important to have a balance between them and the omegas, omega-3s. Yeah,
exactly. And then omega-7, metabolic health, also is believed to aid in insulin sensitivity, and Dr. Barak is going to talk about that in a minute. Omega-9, again, improves the good HDL cholesterol levels, reduces the bad LDL. So this is important as well. And do you want to talk about the balance?
Yeah. So here's a deal.
Really important.
Back some decades ago, closer to, I don't know, even longer than Bill and I have been in the industry, there was a time that the balance between omega-6s and omega-3s were this. It was about a 15-to-1 ratio. You had 15 times more omega-3s than omega-6s. And that helped to keep certainly inflammation in balance, and that was good for cardiovascular disease and so forth. Now it's shifted. Now it's closer to a reverse, where you have like almost 15 times more omega-6 than you do omega-3. And this has to do with modern diets that contain in excess of omega-6s, particularly from processed food and fried foods.
Yes.
And because you have a huge amount of the omega-6s compared to the omega-3s, you get more inflammation, particularly if it's not balanced with omega-3 intake. So omega-6 isn't a bad guy, but like many things, if it's out of balance, then we have a problem. And we do have that problem today.
Yes, we do. Yep, you're right. Thanks, Gene, for that. And then lastly, let's just give why are we talking about omega-3s as our first ingredient in the Bioactive Breakdown? And that's because, it is a substantial market. So, for example, the huge market. The global market for omega fatty acids is seeing some really significant growth. And mainly it's driven by consumer awareness of the health benefits there, which are pretty numerous. So cardiovascular health, brain development, inflammation reduction. So in 2024, the omega-3 market is projected to reach approximately $8.67 billion, and by 2034, $17.86 billion, Gene, with an annual growth rate of 7.5%. That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And then omega fatty acids are primarily sourced like from marine-based products, so like fish oil.
Omega-3, yeah.
Omega-3, sorry. Fish oil, krill oil, algae, and we're going to talk about that. This is the one consumers probably most familiar with is omega-3. This is what they hear about the most. But the marine segment accounted for the largest share of the market in 2023 due to the high content of EPA and DHA, which are essential for heart and brain health. Okay, but then enter algae. A lot of people are moving to source from algae, which would be considered a vegan source, plant-based sources, either flaxseed, chia seed, or also algae, which is going to be really popular among vegan and vegetarian consumers. And then again, the applications of omega-3s are diverse and within dietary supplements and also functional foods, Gene. So
That's right.
And also pharmaceutical and animal feed sectors are really important for this type of ingredient. So yes, this is why we are talking about omega-3s or omega fatty acids in general.
Right. And
okay.
Yeah. So, and we're gonna have three very interesting guests today.
Yes.
So, Bill, do you want to just give a brief introduction to them?
Yep. I'm going to bring everybody. Everybody's in the virtual green room, so I'm going to bring everybody on board here, and then we'll do a quick intro for everybody. So let me bring everybody on, and there we go. Welcome, gentlemen. Yay. It worked. It's my first time producing a show. You wouldn't believe what my screen looks like over here. But so we successfully connected everybody. We got two people from Norway, and actually, Dr. Barak, I don't know where you're located.
I'm in Boston, yeah.
You're in Boston, and Gene's in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. So we're all over the world here. So isn't this cool? Isn't technology cool? So let me do a quick bio introduction for each of you guys, and then you guys can introduce yourselves. So I'll start with you, Thomas. Thomas Bednall Rebstad. Did I pronounce that correctly? I hope.
Yeah, you got it.
I got it. Okay, good. He's a nutritionist with a bachelor's in human nutrition, Edinburgh, and a master's in health food innovation management from Maastricht University in the Netherlands. And he's been working with the krill-based dietary supplement products at Aker BioMarine for over 7 years and has extensive knowledge about dietary supplements, in particular understanding omega-3 fatty acids and phospholipids, their bioavailability and health benefits, and is well-versed in global health claims surrounding these products. So Thomas, introduce yourself and say hello to everybody.
Oh, great. Thanks, Bill. Lovely to be here. Super nice to be invited on the show. So yeah, as you said, Bill, working with krill oil-based dietary supplements with omega-3s for well over 7 years now, almost 8 years. Really big fan of krill oil supplements, really big fan of omega-3s in general, and sort of how their effects manifest in the body, how it's kind of digested, absorbed, and transported around the body to get kind of different health benefits. So I've been working with primarily krill-based products on the omega-3 side at Aker BioMarine, utilizing krill for different types of supplements, whether it's generic kind of krill oils to kind of for whole body benefits, or some other krill-specific products which have kind of target delivery, for example, to the brain, which we can talk a little bit about later, and some other sort of absorption-based platforms. So, yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas, and welcome. And then we have Dr. Furkan Barak. Dr. Barak is an endocrinologist and faculty member leading translational immunometabolism research group at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and basic science researcher at Harvard Chan School of Public Health, Department of Molecular Metabolism. His research mainly focuses on the role of adipose tissue-derived molecules in obesity and development of new therapeutic strategies in obesity-related immunometabolic diseases such as diabetes, fatty liver disease, and asthma. And Dr. Barak has a long list of prestigious awards. I won't go through the list for Khan, but I'll share the bio with everybody later so they can check that out. But he's also triple board certified in internal medicine and endocrinology, diabetes and metabolism, and obesity medicine. And his clinical practice focuses on obesity, diabetes, and immunometabolism. So welcome, Furkan, to the show. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much, Bill. And Gene, thanks for having me. It's going to be fun. So I'm very excited to be here. And we have been collaborating with Terraces Life Sciences. So I'm going to talk about our collaboration in science on omega-7. and particularly palmitoleic acid. And I'm very excited to be here. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it. So from the hurricane, they don't have a power.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
So it's a tough times there. But I will discuss what we have been discovered and how we touched base with and how we met with Tarsus Life Science and how we progress the science of palmitoleic acid.
Cool.
Awesome. Welcome and wonderful to have you, Furkan. And then last but not least, but our Englishman not in New York, but from Scandinavia. And I should have said that for you, Thomas, too. But we have Derek Tobin. Derek has a PhD in molecular and cell biology from the University of Newcastle upon Tyne, UK. 7 years postdoctoral research at Karolinska Institute in Sweden and the University of Oslo in Norway. Derek has 22 years of clinical research and product development within in vitro and in vivo diagnostics, oncology therapy, and the last 8 years in research and development of omega-3 concentrates for specific health claims. Derek has responsibility for preclinical and clinical studies for EPACs and their oils there. So, Derek, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon. So thanks for inviting me. It's very a new concept. So it's pretty exciting, I think, for all of us to do this, to do a live podcast. So just a few minutes on EPACs. I can tell you it's established in 1838. So it's a very old company. 186 years of experience in making fish oils for human consumption around the world. So a long time to get the purity as pure as possible and the quality as high quality as possible. We are based in Ålesund, which is a ridiculously beautiful city on the west coast of Norway. So if you ever come to Norway, you're invited to come to the, we'd be happy to meet you in Ålesund amongst all the mountains and the fjords and sea. EPACs makes omega-3 concentrates from fish, from marine sources, or fish, since Archaeomarine is also marine, krill. Of course, we have all the sustainability and environmental responsibility taken very seriously. Yeah. We're also very scientifically based, so we have over 100 publications using EPACs oils, external publications, I might add. We have a history of innovation, being the first company to commercially use ethyl ester as a means of up-concentrating, and then also the first company to use re-esterification to triglycerides in a commercial setting. And our feeling for innovation, or our passion for innovation, continues then. So we are going a bit beyond omega-3s, and it was a very nice introduction you gave to omega-3s, and also to include the omega-9s and 7s.
Thank you.
And today I'll be talking about our new launch, which is a mixed oil in omega-3, 9, 11. And I'll talk about that afterwards. Not quite the 9 that Professor Jean talked about, but a different 9.
Awesome.
All right. Well, so welcome, everybody. We're excited to dive into the science here. So now we're going to go through with each of you, and I think each of you are going to talk about kind of the latest science and specific omega fatty acids you guys are working on with your company. And Thomas, you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure.
And we'll just go to you first, and then we'll go around table, and then we'll have a Q&A after you guys, each of you present about that.
Yeah, I'm eager to hear all about the research that everybody's doing.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Can I share a window? There we go.
Perfect. We can see that.
Yeah.
You got this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great. Of course, now I'm presenting and I don't see you guys anymore. But anyway.
That's all right. We can see you.
Classic presentation style where you're just looking at your own screen. No, but great. I think just to give a quick sort of little bit of a background to Archaeomarine. Archaeomarine was created back in 2006. So almost now 18 years. And they started with the strong belief that, krill and krill oil can have positive effects for human health. And we've been investigating those benefits over the past 15 years. Today, we're the world's leading supplier of krill oil and have not just krill oil supplements, but other krill-derived ingredients and branded ingredients for different areas of human health. So I think we kind of need to pay a little bit of homage to krill, the animal, just to kind of give a bit of background as to where our krill oil comes from. Krill are crustaceans. They are small but very, very mighty. They are present in all the oceans.
I think you want to change the slide. It's on the first slide still.
Oh, I've moved over to the next slide.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I think it's maybe it's not because it's not in slide mode or something. There you go. Now we see it.
So now you see, but you see my presentation deck, do you?
Now we see the presentation deck, but now we see the second slide.
The tiny superstar crustacean we see.
There you go.
Yeah, but you're not seeing it full screen, right?
No.
No.
You'd have to be in slideshow mode, which you're not.
No, I think he is actually, but
it doesn't
okay.
appear to be the case here. Yeah. Typically, you'd have to go to slideshow and then hit,
Just you're on slide 2. Just
go from current slide. Click on. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And then if I go to the next slide, do you see the next slide?
It's not responding.
It's not responding. Oh, great. Okay,
No.
Then let's do it old school, where I try to make it as.
That'll work.
There we go.
There you go.
Is that all right?
That's great.
Yeah, and it's always the problem with Zoom too. When you try to go to slideshow mode, then you can end up with like anyway. So continue.
Well,
you're
thanks.
telling us about krill.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so this is the little krill animal here. They are present in all the world's oceans. You can find them in the Pacific, Atlantic. You can find them in the fjords here in Norway, and you can find a lot of them in Antarctic, around the Antarctic continent. And actually, that's where it makes it possible to actually harvest krill commercially. So krill are wild caught, and it makes it possible because they're in such huge swarms down in Antarctica. It's you would only find the odd krill around here, for example, in the Norwegian fjord, but they're huge swarms in Antarctica. Actually, swarms so large they stretch tens of kilometers wide, and it has been reported that they can be seen from space. So they actually turn the surface of the ocean sort of this pinky red hue. So it's they're pretty cool. They can lay about 10,000 eggs per day, each individual krill, and there's a huge amount of them. So it's twice the size of the human biomass. But of course, what we're interested in here today is sort of the benefits of krill, and krill oil especially, which is the oil that is extracted from the krill animal. So krill oil, I think if you sort of asked most people, what's the nutrient in krill oil, most people would probably say, oh, it's omega-3s. Maybe they might say EPA, DHA. And the thing about krill oil is it's more of a multi-nutrient kind of supplement. So it's got several different nutrients in the oil that all contribute to human health in various different ways. That's not my dog.
That's not my dog.
Someone's got a dog.
I don't have a dog.
That's my dog. Nope. I'm putting it on mute.
Okay. Thanks, Gene. Yes, it's not just omega-3s. It's also got many other kinds of nutrients in there. I mean, just to name a few, choline, really, really important nutrient for a multitude of effects in, for example, the brain, nervous system, right? It's a precursor to acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter, helps control all of our extremities. Also really important in liver health as well, sort of keeping fat sort of away from the liver and being transported around the body in safe ways. It's got astaxanthin in krill oil as well, which is an antioxidant. Quite small amounts of astaxanthin in general, but enough to preserve the oil, keep it nice and fresh. We don't need to add any additives or preservatives to the oil. And it's also responsible for the beautiful red color that krill oil is. And kind of the star, really, of krill oil is actually the form that the omega-3s come in, and that's a phospholipid form, which has many different kinds of implications for, how is that omega-3 digested? How does it get transported around the body, and where does it go, right? Because we all want our omega-3s to go to the places that we need them the most. So the phospholipids help with the absorption and transport around our body. And they actually get inserted very easily and efficiently into our body's cells. And it's there that actually you want the health benefits. It's when omega-3s are actually in the cell membranes. So Aquabarmarine has, historically is a krill oil company, but we have in the latest years been diversifying and also utilizing krill and krill-derived oils in different ways. So the primary ingredients that we have would be the Superba krill oil, Superba Boost, which would be the highest concentrated krill oil on the market. We then have a sort of absorption technology platform where we actually utilize specifically the phospholipids from krill to help increase the absorption rates and the bioavailability of other ingredients, for example, CoQ10 or lutein, some other ingredients which kind of suffer from maybe poor absorption in the gut. Phospholipids can actually help with the absorption of other ingredients. So it's kind of a very exciting platform using our krill-derived oil. Another one is Lysoveta, which is an LPC or lysophosphatidylcholine bound EPA DHA. And it's a very complicated way of saying LPC is the way that EPA and DHA omega-3s actually get transported across the blood-brain barrier. So EPA and DHA need to be attached to an LPC molecule in order to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain. And of course, the body can synthesize these LPC, EPA, DHA from all sources of omega-3. But our Lysoveta is very high in LPC specifically. So you got targeted delivery to the brain. And we've also delved and you kind of mentioned this earlier, Bill and Jean, but algae oil is, it's a very popular product nowadays, and consumers are looking for alternatives to the traditional fish and krill oil supplements, and Fluormarine is our answer to that need. We've got the highest natural concentration of DHA algae on the market, so very exciting to have that product also in our portfolio. We've got over 50, probably more than 55 human clinical studies documenting the benefits of our products, and over 135 if you sort of take into consideration other types of studies, analytical studies and in vitro studies, etc. So just to kind of give a quick, I'm not going to go into all these in detail at all, but it's just to highlight that, omega-3s are so important for so many areas of the body. I mean, our bodies are made up, all of our organs, our skin, much of our body is made up of phospholipids, right, to the cell membranes, and those membranes all contain omega-3s. So if you increase your omega-3 levels, if you increase your omega-3 index, you're going to get benefits manifested in many areas of the body. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about specifically actually skin health. I think many people are quite familiar with the omega-3 benefits for brain, omega-3 benefits for heart, joint support, etc. But I think skin health is something that's it's also kind of relatively new, and we have some really exciting science that was just published actually in, it was actually either late July or early August this year. So really brand new science has come out. So this is definitely a section where we go through the science, right, Bill?
Yeah, yes,
yeah,
it is.
Cool. So I'll skip down to here. And
yeah, I'm interested to see for skin health. That's fascinating. So I don't think people would associate omega fatty acids with that.
No, they don't really. And this goes back to what I was saying, that there's a lot of, and I think omega-3s can unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, omega-3s can kind of they're so good for so many areas of the body. It's almost easy if you talk about everything, then you can kind of go, oh my god, this is snake oil. It's just not. It can't be good for everything. But of course, if you understand nutrition and you understand nutrients and how sort of diverse the body is, and what nutrients can actually do for so many different areas of the body, you just understand that, wow, there are so many undiscovered benefits to omega-3s or vitamin D, vitamin K, that we don't even know yet. So,
Exactly.
Typical science of omega-3s, historically has been on heart health, and we have a lot of science on that. But some of the new areas are skin health. So this study was published in July. I think it was published in August. And it was a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled pilot study where we supplemented krill oil versus placebo. We measured three different parameters for skin health. So transepidermal water loss, hydration, and elasticity in the skin. So it's actually two studies, two separate studies pooled together into one publication. And the only difference between the two studies was the dose. So we had 50 volunteers in each study. And in the first study, we had a 1 gram dose of Superba Boost, which is our krill oil concentrate. So it's a 56% phospholipid product. And we compare that to 1 gram of placebo. And in the second study, it was a 2 gram dose, so basically doubling the dose. So participants took either krill oil or placebo over 3 months. And then we measured the transepidermal water loss, or TOOL. And then we also measured skin hydration, skin elasticity, and of course the omega-3 index, which is, we measure it all of our studies. It's sort of the amount of omega-3s that are in your red blood cell membranes. And we know that red blood cell membrane omega-3 levels correlate to omega-3 levels in your heart and other cells around your body. So it's a nice way to kind of give your sort of overall status of how much omega-3s are in your body, not just measuring it in blood serum, for example.
Quick question,
So
Thomas. Sorry.
Yeah.
What's the instrument you're using to measure the moisture or water
Yeah.
loss?
So it's a tuometer. So I haven't actually seen it myself, but it basically measures the amount of water that is evaporated from the skin, and it measures the transepidermal water loss. So it's a measure of sort of how much water is kind of naturally lost through the skin, which doesn't include things like sweating, for example. So obviously our body is continuously evaporating water, right? And this measures the kind of that normal water loss. And if you have a normal healthy skin or a normal kind of barrier function, right? The skin is a barrier to the insides. If your skin is working properly, you should have kind of a relatively normal water loss. But if you have dry skin, if you have low omega-3s, for example, and you don't have that kind of those structures of the skin cells working properly, you're going to get sort of cracked skin, maybe dry skin, and then water loss is going to accelerate. And kind of looking to reduce that.
Okay.
Hold moisture in the skin. So, I mean, just to kind of give a quick overview of the results, right? Statistically significant increase in skin hydration when you take 1 gram and 2 gram dose of Superba Boost. And we had also statistically significant increases in skin elasticity, both with 1 gram and also 2 gram in comparison to placebo. And it was also dose dependent, which is also not particularly surprising, seeing as though, you know, the more omega-3s or the more phospholipids you're getting into your skin cell membranes, the more sort of water, the better the barrier is going to be in order to retain moisture. So for skin hydration and increase your sort of skin elasticity. And skin elasticity is quite interesting. It's basically a measure of how elastic your skin is. So when you sort of pull your skin, sort of how quickly does it kind of go back to its original state? And you know, we all know as we age, right, skin elasticity kind of decreases. Skin can become wrinkly and more sort of slow to go back to the same level. Also, if you're dehydrated, right? So I'm not sure if you can use the part of your finger, right? If you pull the part of skin over your knuckle and you actually pull it together, if it kind of stays, which is actually exactly kind of what mine is doing right now, kind of stays a little bit high. Actually, you know, you're a little bit dehydrated and could do with some water.
Well, water is pretty important.
100% from glass here. So that was hydration and elasticity, and we also saw significant reductions in skin water loss, or TOOL, up to 6 times. That's with only 2 capsules a day over 3 months, so one gram of krill oil. So this is really sort of showcasing that, you know, krill oil is having a direct effect on skin barrier function to help retain moisture in the skin, and sort of give your skin this kind of healthy barrier function, help supporting it do its job basically, which is keep our insides in and the outside out. Breezing kind of a little bit quickly through it, really. I mean, this is just a showcase to sort of validate the kind of the effect, and this is this is an illustration to illustrate the omega-3 index, which is, as I mentioned, it's a test where you measure the amount of omega-3s, specifically EPA and DHA, in your cell membranes. In this case, it's easiest to measure in the red blood cell membranes. And what they do is they literally count the amount of molecules of EP and DHA that sit in your phospholipid bilayer, your cell membrane. And you want to be, the optimal range is 8% or above. Levels kind of vary a bit across the world. If you're sort of sitting around the 4% mark, in many Western countries, for example, in the US, average is somewhere between 4 and 6. Whereas if you're some countries in Europe have somewhere between 6 and 8, still below 8%, which is optimal. And actually, the only countries to actually even go above 8 are those like Korea, Japan, and Greenland, where they eat a lot of fatty fish. Anyway, the point about the omega-3 index here is that the higher the omega-3 index, so here on the x-axis, as the omega-3 index increases, the rate of water loss decreases. So there's a strong correlation between those two. So the higher the increase in the omega-3 index, the more omega-3s you have in your blood cell membranes, the less water is lost from your skin. Yeah, so key study takeaways there would just be that krill oil boosts skin health in several different ways. It's dose dependent, so the more you take, the better effect you get. It's linked to the omega-3 index. And one of the interesting things about this study was it was done on people with healthy skin. So these were not people who had specifically psoriasis or some kind of dry skin, for example. And we're actually seeing significant reductions or increases in skin hydration elasticity. So it would be very exciting to actually redo these studies in those who maybe actually have dry skin, for example. Maybe they might even see a bigger benefit. I mean, we know that when people go from, for example, 4% omega-3 index and they go up to 8%, they actually feel better. It's not so often that you feel better from taking supplements, right? There's many supplements that you kind of have to hope that it's doing something on the inside and you'll benefit later on in your life. But many people who are really low in omega-3s and they actually get their omega-3 levels up to the optimal range really actually just feel a lot better. And skin is a really easy way to kind of see effects. It's not so easy to see effects on your heart, right? You might not actually notice the effects until later on in life. But skin is a really interesting way, and I think in the omega-3 industry, it's a good benefit to really demonstrate the actionable benefits of omega-3s.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Was that it?
So I think that was it for me.
Okay, great.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, certainly great applications for the whole cosmeceutical space, which is growing rapidly. It's something else we could do a show on, Gene, I'm pretty sure. But,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, great. We're going to move to you, Furkan, if you can go next and tell us what your research you're working on with Tersus Life Sciences. That would be awesome.
Sure.
While you're in the process of doing that, I just wanted to mention that some years back, I actually did a little research project for Tersus, where I got to learn a little bit more about omega-7 than I knew previously, and I did find it to be particularly interesting because I knew a lot about already omega-3s, I knew a lot about omega-6s, I even knew a bit about omega-9s, but not as much about omega-7s. So it was a fun project.
So basically, I'm going to talk about the omega-7 palmitoleic acid. And we, like all stories, starts from obesity. So what we do is, so I'm a basic scientist in molecular metabolism, and I'm a clinician at the same time, treating obesity, researching obesity. And back in time, so we're looking for what is really changing when you're healthy versus you become obese or get overweight with energy excess. And we're focusing on adipose tissue. What is changing until you still have obesity, but you're still healthy versus you develop the disease or the diabetes, fatty liver disease as such. And this is like back in 2008, I was going to show you the Cell paper. That is our original discovery at Harvard. So while looking for something else in adipose tissue, we discovered actually one of the rescue mechanism of the body against obesity. And it was basically, and matter of fact, it was palmitoleic acid. So what happens is when you have an energy excess that you cannot store that energy, so it has to store it in the form of fat, because fat tissue is a safe storage. I mean, we always think fat tissue is bad, but it's actually, fat is really good up until it's not. So it's basically taking this, like let's say you had a sugar, switching to fat and storing in the fat tissue, and while doing it, send the message. And the message is simple: there's a danger. I'm gonna store this energy. You should not. And it goes to like circulation as a kind of a messenger. We call it lipokin, and goes to liver and basically reverse and prevent fat accumulation in the liver, and it goes to muscle. It improves insulin resistance there, so you kind of get the sugar inside to dispose there, and it's circulating. It's anti-inflammatory in the endothelial cells, and also calm down the circulating immune cells. So after our original discovery, and so it seems like this was a kind of a rescue mechanism of the body's own, and this is synthesized, and it exists in the food as well. So like in macadamia nuts, sea buckthorn, like whole food, like fat dairy, we said, there's nothing more natural than this, and can we mimic the body and basically give the palmitoleic acid from outside, and we infused pure palmitoleic acid initially to mouse, and dramatically improved insulin sensitivity. It reversed atherosclerosis in atherosclerotic background, and then it reversed fat accumulation in the liver. So then said, okay, this is great. And then all this maybe like 15 years, many other groups showed in many different animals, like from rats to sheep and all, they validated our results. And then we wanted to go to human, of course. So let's try. And one of the biggest problem, as you know, in the supplement world, people just claim without a good science behind
Right.
it, and just associations and a kind of small studies. And we said like this needs to be a very legit, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trial with the people who have obesity and prediabetes. But the problem was, so if you cannot do this with macadamia nut or other things, because the issue, the palmitoleic acid is the good guy, always comes with the palmitic acid. And palmitic
Right.
acid is the lipotoxicity that comes with obesity. I was going to show you that, it's how it's toxic, but the palmitoleic acid is the good brother. So try to kind of oppose its bad effect. But if you give them together, you cannot expect good effects. So at that time, we met with Tersus. They listened and they kind of like really processed our science early on. I think since 2012, and they get all the patents and they worked on it, and they were able to purify palmitoleic acid with removing palmitic acid almost completely. And they do this with a collaboration in South Korea. And I call them like, I want to do this, but I cannot find the exact product. Like it has to be pure. And they were able to do it. So it has like 90% plus pure palmitoleic acid, POA, with less than 0.1% palmitic acid. So we get a clinical grade kind of capsules. And the another thing is you got to give high dose. That's another big problem of omega-3s and everything. So it's, as a nutrition is great, but if you really claim a health benefit, it has to be high enough dose to reach every compartment to give you the good effect. And then we like had this 1.5 gram up to, and they did a great job. This was like an investigator-initiated Harvard study. I am the PI, and Tersus Life Sciences, we collaborated, and they provided the capsules. And so basically we are taking the people who have obesity and prediabetes. So prediabetes is not a disease state. And then our primary endpoint is insulin resistance. So basically insulin resistance, everybody know it leads to diabetes. And that's one of the big problem for prediabetes. And there are 400 million plus prediabetics in the world, which we don't do anything about. And they lead to diabetes, then all the coronary artery disease and everything. But because it's not a disease state, you cannot give them a drug or you cannot do anything. So we thought this would be like a great contribution to those people. And then basically we are doing a very high end study. So what we do is, so we recruit the people, and then for 8 weeks we give them palmitoleic acid or placebo. We don't know. It's a randomized and double blind study. And then before and after, we do the same exact testing. What we do is we take them, we hospitalize them. It's a complicated study. And first, we do them mixed meal tolerance test. We measure how much insulin they secrete, what is their response to a meal, how much sugar goes up, how much lipids goes up, and how much insulin they secrete. And then the next day we do hyperinsulinemic euglycemic clamp. So I was going to show you how we do it, which we have a clinical center which NASA built for us. And that's what we do in animals with radioactivity. So, but that's a gold standard test. So that test, so you still get the physiology, and you can tell exactly what is the insulin resistance by number, like quantitative manner. And you can say how much liver produced the sugar, what is the disposal to certain organs. You can measure all of those. And it can be done in very few centers in the world, but that's what it is. When you do that test, that's the gold standard. But it takes, you measure the glucose every 5 minutes. The nurse sits one part, and then we set a biochemistry lab inside the room. So it's a YSI, it's not finger stick. It has to be super accurate. And then according to that, so you give high amount of insulin to someone. So technically, when you give a high amount of insulin, it pushes the sugar inside the cell, so your sugar should go down. But we don't allow that. We keep everybody's sugar same, like let's say 90 and normoglycemic. But simplified version, if you're insulin sensitive, so you require more sugar to given from outside to keep that 90. Like, because you basically, let's say if I wouldn't give you sugar, you would be like 40. So I give you 50 to keep up. But if you're insulin resistant or like pre-diabetic coming to diabetes range, you're already very resistant with that insulin, your sugar could go down a little bit. So you just require less normal sugar to keep the normal glycemia. So, but you kind of get that steady state. It takes 4 or 5 hours. After that, we do liver MRI, PDFF, to look for liver fat percent. And then we get all the fasting labs like cholesterol, lipid panels, certain hormones, triglycerides, and all of those. And then start giving them either placebo or a kind of POA. We call it POA. And 4 weeks later, they come for a fasting blood draws for all the hormonal profile again. And we also get their DNA and get their immune cells from the circulation, isolate them to look for inflammatory gene expression, because we know it's also act in an anti-inflammatory way. And then 8 weeks later, they come and they go through the same exact testing, mixed meal tolerance test. And we also do DEXA scan to look for body composition, like where the fat is, around the organs, under the skin, what is the exact quantitation of the body fat and where it is, and muscle and everything. And do the same exact testing after 8 weeks. And then kind of and it's powered for insulin resistance because this clamp is extremely challenging test, but it's very strong. So we have more or less 43 people in this study. And to kind of see what is the actual effect. So after that, so as of now, it's a supplement. So because it's insulin resistance is not a disease, prediabetes is not a disease. So people can take this as a supplement, or people can put this in a food. Like I really, imagine I met with big kind of food companies, like to kind of change a bad oil with this one or any other like great oils we are discussing today's to provide good food, or if there are shakes for like glucerna type shakes that can be fortified, it can be supplement, or if we show this signals, it can be very high dose. It can go to the diabetes prevention thing. So our next kind of stop is going to be a kind of diabetes prevention and fatty liver disease reversal kind of thing. So we are collaborating with a hospital clinic in Barcelona. So we are doing human biopsies from the livers and creating organoids from normal liver, from fatty liver, from NASH, like hepatitis and cirrhosis. So kind of in a petri dish, immortal actual liver from the human biopsies. And then we put them a palmitoleic acid to see what spectrum we can reverse things in terms of like a fatty liver. Because this is fascinating. The POA, the same molecule, boosts the adipogenesis, making fat inside the fat tissue, but the same molecule goes and inhibit the same enzyme in the liver, which is SCD1 delta saturase. So, which is normally it's very hard to kind of do, or and people were thinking at that process called de novo lipogenesis, making fat from the sugar. Everybody was thinking it's bad, and for example, like Pfizer created an inhibitor of it, but it backfired because you cannot be against fat, adipogenesis. It backfires. So fat is not really necessarily a bad thing. So they found out that the platelet formation requires this. Otherwise, they just die early on. All the thrombocytopenia related things, they kind of stop the trials and program. So you cannot just globally be against fatty acids or fat formation. So adipogenesis is very important, but it has to happen inside the safety storage and not ectopically outside, like muscle, heart, immune cells, and
That makes
other.
sense.
So that's what we do, and we collaborate all around the world and with Tersus as well. And we are halfway through the trial, so it's Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask: is the branded name of this material still Provenol?
Yeah, it's a provenol. They have different purities. They have 50%.
Right.
And they have 90%. And according to the indication, because the data, this is kind of a lipokin, it has pleiotropic effects. So it works on atherosclerosis and the cholesterol metabolism and its glucose metabolism, the both. But it depends on which spectrum you're in. So you want to stay in healthy, you don't have to get high dose. So that's 50% still as a good supplement. But if you really, be going through certain indication, it needs to be higher dose and more purity. That they have 93% as of now. It's a provenal. So.
I just wanted to add something here, just because, as I mentioned before, I had previously looked at some of the other research, and it was just such an impressive study to me. I just quickly wanted to mention a study done in 2014, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled, in which Provenol was used. And this was with people with dyslipidemia and some mild systemic inflammation. And just the short version of this is that in the Provenol group, they found a 44% reduction in C-reactive protein. So you saw some very real reductions in inflammation. You saw a 15% reduction in triglycerides. You saw an 8% reduction in LDL cholesterol, and a 5% increase in HDL, the good cholesterol. So I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of interesting research that does exist on this particular material.
Yeah, definitely. And that was the kind of like where and when we met with them, and we kind of go through the data. So there's definitely, and high sensitive CRP is also one of the secondary endpoint of us too. And it's, if the bodies try to do this in this way, mimicking the body is the new way of even like preventing the disease or really supplementing in a natural way. Because as an endocrinologist or obesity medicine expert, so we don't have any more tolerance for any kind of chemical drugs or something. And even all these GLP-1s, and it came from a biological discovery of how body handle things. And that when you provide, you don't get off-target problems. That's why I think going back to nature and bringing back is the way to do this. And everybody knows this, the Eskimo study, which I got this, IRB approval, but I used this 1970s, this Eskimos. There's a fascinating research. I mean, I'm like blown away that now this Danish scientists, they go to the Greenland, found 130 Eskimo, and their first degree relatives moved to Denmark, and they looked exactly every single thing they eat, and they were eating like 3-4 times more palmitoleic acid a day. It's like 6.5 gram of POA daily, and they were getting right under the skin of like a whale and seal, and basically eating 65-70% of fat almost. And then they had no diabetes, no coronary artery disease. Their blood levels, triglycerides, LDL is low, HDL is high. Their first degree relatives living in Denmark with, I mean, nothing wrong with Denmark or overall Western diet. They had all the diabetes, all the problems. Their cholesterol is higher. They did all the lipidomic studies and everything. That was the inspiring study. I was like, it was a fascinating study. I think fish oil also kind of overall came from those kind of inspiring studies, but POA kind of stayed there. And when we accidentally discovered this is actually a rescue ingredient and not just heart and lipid metabolism, but also sugar metabolism. So we wanted to do the highest quality study to make sure, this is what it is and what way and what dose and what spectrum to be able to contribute to this huge problem, with prediabetes and obesity, as you know, like 800 million with obesity, 400 million people with prediabetes, which predispose you to 100 another disease, so that you need to do something before you get those diseases. So I think
right.
POA and all this like great lipids are a big contribution to human health, way more than many other chemicals. And I'm a physician, so I have to admit this. This is the way to treat. Other way around, it always provide another harm than more good. So we are very excited our program, and we are looking forward to kind of expand. And once we finish the trial, we will continue in kind of specific indication through all the secondary endpoints are going to be, each of them is going to be one indication, and continue.
Very good. All right, thank you, Furkan. I did have one comment to make, and actually one question. We can come back to that in the Q&A, but I was going to just real quickly, for pre-diabetic, what are the biomarkers that classify someone as pre-diabetic? Some people may not know that.
Yeah, so it's basically hemoglobin A1C we use, and we use kind of like if you pass through 5.7, but you're not at 6.5, which is diabetes, you're pre-diabetic, or your fasting sugar is more than 100, but less than 126. That's kind of we use as a pre-diabetes criteria.
And you're right. So, for funding research, obviously it's not a disease state, so it's hard to get money to do that. But from the dietary supplement industry standpoint, for me, it's always about being proactive with your health and things that you can do. So it sounds like your program fits perfectly into that scenario, and especially with obesity, which is a huge, as we all know, is a huge problem. Just personally speaking, my father developed diabetes and ended up on dialysis, and that's what ended up taking his life one day. So for me, I've always been passionate about that area. In fact, I wrote an article 10 years ago on this subject for a magazine about obesity, and I actually got the data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, I think, or something like that, and it showed the progression of the number of states, and I'm just speaking of the U.S. now, but again, this is a global problem, but there were only, I forgot what year it was. It was, this is 2014. So it was like in 10 years before that. There were only three states in the whole U.S. that had obese populations at that time. And then it increased to today, every state has obese population. So, as much as we spent time talking about obesity and this problem, and this is something I want to get into in a future show, Gene, but we haven't turned the tide on it yet. It's still, it's not changing, and so there are numerous factors. So it's like, how do we do that? That's
a good show that we should do. I agree, Bill. That would be an excellent thing, and that's another thing Bill and I have in common. I had two uncles who died from complications from diabetes, leading me to write a book called Complementary Treatments for Diabetes. So yeah.
I mean, it's a new normal. It's, if you look, unfortunately, like 10 years ago, we were showing those fancy maps, like from gray becoming red slowly. It's not even interesting anymore. Unfortunately, it's all red now.
It's all red now. Exactly.
If you look, the entire nation, 70+% is either overweight or have obesity. Like normal BMI, just 18% in the entire country. I mean, unfortunately, this became new normal. Like almost fourth
Yeah.
quarter of the country facing this problem in certain spectrum. Starting from overweight all the way to severe obesity. It's unfortunately it's a new normal, so that we have to do something proactively.
Yeah. I agree.
All right.
Very good. All right. So Derek, let's talk about what you guys are doing over there at EBAX.
Thanks very much. Really, really interesting talks, Barak and Thomas. I've been making notes actually. So we are at EPAX. We've just launched, or this year we launched a mixed oil called omega-3 911. It's composed of omega-3, as you said, EPA, DHA, and the long chain monounsaturates, omega-9 and omega-11. And the reason we're doing this is when you make omega-3 from fish, you use sardines and anchovies because they're the richest, the fish that have the most EPA DHA. So if you squeeze the fish, the oil that comes out, the predominant oil is EPA DHA. In the North Atlantic Sea, there are species that have quite low EPA DHA, but when you squeeze them, the predominant fatty acid is omega-11, and then the number 2 is omega-9. And these sort of emerging, I don't know if you would agree with the word emerging, Furkan, but this monounsaturates emerging health benefits that are coming out in the literature, as well as this kind of alternative source for beneficial fatty acids is very interesting to us. And of course, it's North Atlantic, which is our sort of backyard ocean, as it were. So EPAX is very interested to sort of further investigate the health benefits of these kind of an alternative to anchovy and sardines. So the health benefit part of it, omega-3, as you described in your introduction, has a huge amount of science backing that it affects all kinds of body parts from birth to old age. So that's okay. The LC-MUFAs is what I'm going to go through. I will call them LC-MUFAs rather than long-chain monounsaturated fatty acids. So just a quick chemical description, as you alluded to, Bill, at the beginning. The omega-9 that we're talking about here is the brother, if you like, of EPA. It's 20 carbons long, and the first double bond, or the only double bond, is at the 9th position. So that is different from the olive oil, which is 18 carbons long, I think. So this is long chain rather than, 2 carbons is enough to push it over to medium chain, I think. So it's not the olive oil-based oleic acid. Sorry. The omega-11 is the sister of DHA. So it's 22 carbons long, same length as DHA, but with a single monounsaturated site at the 11th carbon, as you pointed out. The oil that we have, that we've launched this year, is a concentration. We think it's the only concentrated 911 on the market. It's about a 3 times concentration, and the EPAX magic dust that we use also up concentrates EPA DHA to a minimum level of 250 milligrams, and that's specifically chosen to sort of support the different claims around the world, which are often 250 or 500 milligrams per gram. So you should be able to use European EFSA claims or claims in the US for those that exist. We have about 420 milligrams per gram LC-MUFA. So the total bioactive is about 720 milligrams per gram bioactive lipid. So it's a pretty high concentration bioactive lipid. Our interests is probably not surprising after hearing these last 2 talks in metabolic health and skin. And actually that it encourages me to hear the previous 2 discussions, because it means the science is dragging us in the right direction. I think it's very interesting. What we consider, what we've been thinking about as a mechanism of action, because we want to understand the mechanism first to see which areas to go into, is this anti-inflammatory effect of fatty acids, omega-3. So we know that inflammation drives many of the chronic diseases that we talk about, diabetes and cancer and cardiovascular disease. We know omega-3 hits inflammation in many different parts. As you alluded to, Bill, it competes with omega-6, inflammatory. It switches immune cells off, if you like, this macrophage M1, M2 switch. It's the precursor for these SPMs, which maybe should be another show. These resolvins, these very active lipids that switch off inflammation. The LC-MUFAs, what I know, I found Furkan's very interesting mechanism of action, because what we've understood the omega-9/11s is to act on PPAR. This is the data from preclinical studies from the NIH. I haven't heard them being used as signaling molecules, so that's a really interesting alternative. Whether it works or not for us, I don't know, but at least the 9/11 hits PPAR. That maybe not be surprising, because PPAR, it binds many fatty acids, omega-3 included. So the question is, why on earth do you want 9/11 if omega-3 and other fatty acids also activate PPAR, which is anti-inflammatory? PPAR is anti-inflammatory, and it switches, or it lowers this fat generation that Furkan referred to, this de novo lipogenesis. And the story may be, and this is an interesting sort of observation also from the NIH, that omega-3 is pretty systemic. It goes to every part of the body, I think, as Thomas said in his presentation, that it has effects all over the place. When you look at the omega-3 content in the body, it doesn't really seem to go to adipose tissue. And there's nice preclinical data showing this, and human data showing that in the eye, where there's absolutely tons of DHA, that's the most of eye and brain, the adipose tissue is right at the other end of the scale, almost nothing. When you look at studies, in preclinical studies, looking at these omega-9/11 LC-MUFAs, it's almost the opposite. It does go to the liver and to the other tissues and blood, but most of it is going to the adipose tissue. So it's a really interesting kind of yin-yang going on. And in metabolism, we know that liver and adipose tissue are in this complex interplay. I think one of the take-home messages from Furkan's presentation is it's very complicated. I mean, the interplay between these compartments and the signaling molecules and the inflammation and the insulin sensitivity and blah, blah. It's not an easy thing to understand.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think the general consumer doesn't understand the complexity of the human body in terms of interaction stuff. It's not black and white or, this or that. It's always a combination of things and finding that right balance. So, I think today's discussion has really illustrated that for me, I think.
So we feel it's a very sort of compelling story, we feel, to have one omega-3 hitting. It's a simplification, but to say omega-3 is hitting largely liver biology, and LC-MUFAs are largely hitting adipose tissue biology. As I say, it's simplified, but it's basically in that area, and that's why we're thinking it would be interesting with metabolic. Now, it's not just the mechanism. So there's preclinical evidence in the preclinical setting that this is actually working. So obviously omega-3 we know from humans is reducing triglycerides, reducing blood pressure, doesn't have much an effect on LDL cholesterol and insulin. Don't think anyone really claims that. On the other side, preclinical evidence for 9/11 shows about 20-30% reduction in LDL cholesterol, an improvement in insulin sensitivity and glucose levels, and a reduction in inflammatory cytokines, particularly adipokines, so adipose-generated inflammatory cytokines. So the insulin sensitivity is probably from the crosstalk. But anyway, the mechanism, as a molecular biologist, I keep wanting to go back to the mechanism. But there seems to be a good reduction in insulin and glucose, an increase in insulin sensitivity. This is also converted into atherosclerosis in different models, they see about 40 to 80% reduction in the plaque in atherosclerosis. And this is due to both changes in the lipid, the amount of cholesterol that's going through the blood, and also the amount of cholesterol efflux, so the amount of cholesterol being taken out of the plaque. So these are quite fantastic pictures. You just have to see my hands. This is the graph today. But these pictures of atherosclerotic plaques are very striking. And in one of the studies, they used actually oleic acid as a control, which didn't have much of an effect on the levels of plaque in the aorta in that model. These studies, there's several studies, many studies using several models, animal models. So that's a fairly well established preclinical set of data. There's one study in fatty liver showing that it has a good benefit in fatty liver. I know omega-3 has similar preclinical data in fatty liver, which hasn't fully translated to the human situation. Some studies yes, some studies no. So I think it'd be really interesting to see if the combined product will have a more efficacious effect in liver. So we're sponsoring studies now. We're not sponsoring, but we're supplying oils to studies in humans now. So they'll be using EPAC's LC-MUFA oils, looking at these different metabolic aspects in human settings. So please invite me in 12 months' time, and I can tell you the the outcome in the human setting. So they're in different two universities in Norway, actually.
Very cool.
So if I can use a few minutes on skin, is that okay?
Yep. Go ahead.
So basically, the idea for skin is, in a way, the same mechanistic idea that skin is composed, of course, of epidermis, dermis, and subcutaneous fat. So you have that kind of functional unit, and all those units have to work to have a good, healthy skin. We know omega-3 is photoprotective. I think it was done even when I was a student 150,000 years ago, that the amount of UV required to get sunburn or erythema is increased. You become more resistant if you take fish oils. We know omega-3s increase antioxidant expression, endogenous antioxidant expression, anti-inflammatory, anti-aging, if you like the telomere story, where DNA is kind of stabilized, as it were. What we also know is that obesity and inflammation from subcutaneous fat is important or it has a role, let's say, in skin health. So eczema and inflammatory skin conditions, there can be a component of that is the subcutaneous fat. So if we use that compartmentalization theory, then we should have an effect. What we have seen then is we've done a pilot study, just 24 women, in a controlled, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, where we've given our oil or a placebo and measured a statistically significant reduction in facial redness, which is inflammation. This is, I think, using a similar technology to that from Thomas's study, which is a really great study. I encourage people to read the paper, actually. So this, and the people also increased their omega-3 index from around 6.8 in Norway. It's quite a nightmare doing studies in Norway because people do eat fish, not quite as much as Greenland. But they increased to 8.9. So they covered this transition that Thomas talked about, going from a medium cardiovascular risk to low cardiovascular risk. So this study, okay, it's a pilot study, but it's enough to encourage us then to say, let's go further with this. So we have now an independent study, which we're supplying the oil with, LC-MUFA concentrate without EPA DHA to give us a bit of a hold on which component is active. And this is in eczema, so an inflammatory skin condition. And the nice thing about this, we'll also be doing lipidomic analysis by the University of Manchester to see if there's any lipid compositional changes in the skin epidermis. So that would be pretty interesting. And we're hoping to start very soon an EPAC's sponsored study using a similar setup, also looking at this transepithelial water loss, so the skin humidity, if you like, and some in eczema patients as well, to see if there's an improvement there, and also looking at more cosmetic kind of outcomes, because I know everybody's interested in looking beautiful as well. So that should be starting also, we hope, very soon. I don't know any clinical study which is never delayed. I've never heard of clinical study being on time, so maybe you have to invite me in 2 years' time as well. But our basic sort of concluding statements basically is that we know omega-3 has these good effects. We believe the LC movers have strong effects in metabolism and in skin, and we have this preclinical data and early clinical data backing that, and we believe that bringing them together could be what we call the best of both worlds, then, to give a kind of a more comprehensive, I don't want to use the word holistic, but it's more comprehensive target effect. So please invite me back. We're committed to support the science in this, so we will be continuing on this road. And if anyone is interested, please contact me. We're very happy to supply oils, by the way, for clinical studies. And we're at Supply Side West, and the booth is 5825. I'll be there. So
I'll be there. Yeah, we'll all be there, I think.
Yeah, we'll all be there. Singing.
We'll be there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Derek, and actually Thomas and Furkan, all of you. It's been a fascinating discussion. Actually, you were triggering for me. What I want to do now is us move into a little Q&A about that, and with Gene and I, some questions. And then I want to close up the show with talking about where you guys see the future. I'd like to get your perspectives on where we're going with this area of research and this particular ingredient. So I did want to add something now. I had some research that I developed a product that in 2006, and then I launched it at Expo 2007. It was a super antioxidant drink concentrate, and the primary ingredient was a fresh olive leaf. Okay, and you guys triggered something for me when we were talking about the skin health. So it was, it was ingested, right? So everybody knows the benefit of antioxidants and Allurapian, which is one of the major components in there. But also what this company did in Australia is they were able to take the fresh leaf and harvest it fresh, and it was really super potent antioxidant. But also, oleic acid, you mentioned, Derek, it's a C18 omega-9, so it's 18 carbons, whatever. But one of the benefits we saw from people taking the product was they noticed their skin got softer, and it had a benefit on its skin from something they were ingesting. So this actually led me to develop a topical analogous form to work complementary with that, which I never got the commercially launched. So maybe you guys should come talk to me about that. I have the formula, and we could go take that to market. But I'm not kidding. People that had blemishes that they'd had for years, it actually went away, which I found super, super fascinating. But again, isn't that the way with science? You do something, and then you find a result you weren't expecting, and then that's something to explore, So again, let's talk at supply side.
I think it also shows that we talk everything should be statistically significant and populations, but it's a little bit, as Thomas said as well, and you've now said, that if people feel the difference, it could even be a placebo effect. If if it works for you, it's working for you.
So that I didn't mention, but even if it's not an endpoint, so while we were doing the trial, again, we still don't know who is who, but they're significant amount of people, they came and asked, whatever we are taking, can we continue taking? Because we had a dry eye, and it completely went away. And right after we stopped the trial, it came back. So again, I cannot even, but even any kind of oil, it's the advantage of this, I think moisturizing or providing the different types of hydration is very valuable. And as you said, Derek, that I mean, they feel in that way, which has many different roles, and how they feel it matters. It's not even any point, but
Yeah.
to me, so far, that was the very striking phenotype that
Right.
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people
So
that have
go ahead, Thomas.
No, I was just going to say that. I mean, it kind of was going back to sort of an earlier point about, you know, if people are particularly low in nutrients, right, they're going to exhibit more kind of health issues, and then they can really feel the benefits much better than someone who's actually, you know, already on a really good diet, probably takes a multivitamin, for example. I mean, I'm a nutritionist. I started my omega-3 index at about 7% when I started joining Aquamarine. I have not felt a benefit from any supplement that I take. I mean, my diet's generally quite good. It's not the best, of course, but in general, I have a well-balanced diet. And I'm jealous of all these people who take supplements and they go, yeah, God, I feel great. And it's like, well, I'm not feeling any different really, but I know that I'm taking care of my health in the long run. And, you know, of course, it's important to get certain levels up and everything. But
we have a few years on you there, Thomas, so let's give it time.
it'll hit me later on, will it?
A week at Supply Side West, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's going to come a little bit later.
So, Bill, I actually have a question for each of these gentlemen when we were
go ahead.
talking about. So, I want to start with Thomas. You were talking about the omega-3 index, and although this wasn't the specific topic of your discussion, I happen to know that the omega-3 index is considered a fairly significant predictor of cardiovascular disease, and I wondered if you could address why you think that might be.
That's a very good question. I mean, omega-3 fatty acids they're important for, you know, they have so many different kind of mechanisms of action on our health. I mean, they're well known for having impacts on blood flow, for example, flexibility of our cells. So, I mean, if you have, I mean, the cell, you know, all of our organs are made up of cells. The heart cell, right? You have your arteries; they're all made up of cells. Each cell is made up of a phospholipid bilayer, right, where you have maybe a phosphate group head, which might have choline on it, for example, and then you'd have two fatty acid tails, and they can be any kind of fatty acid: saturated fatty acid, monounsaturated fatty acids, etc., etc., etc. Omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, and you know, the composition of those fatty acids in those cell membranes denotes how effective that cell is going to work. So if your heart cell has a lot of saturated fatty acids, for example, because you're eating a lot of saturated fatty acids from your diet, not so many omega-3s from fish, for example, then you're going to get a lot of rigid fatty acids in those cells. Those cells are then not going to be so flexible. They're not going to be able to work so efficiently, and things start to kind of slow down and sort of decelerate. And then you start to get issues, right, which can be with your arteries are not so flexible anymore. Your heart is having to work harder to pump blood around the body. And then you get things like maybe plaque buildup, for example. You talked about atherosclerosis earlier, right, where you get fat buildup in the arteries. And then that can lead to a myriad of heart health issues. And it's not actually just direct impact on the heart, but it's also, cardiovascular disease is sort of the issue that most people present with, but the real issue is actually in the liver, and it starts way before you get cardiovascular disease with liver health and poor liver health. Omega-3s really important for sort of helping with reducing sort of fat accumulation in the liver. The liver will, if you have a lot of fat from your diet and you're not able to store it properly, the liver will end up storing it. You can develop fatty liver. And then when the liver is not able to filter the blood properly, fat transport is then affected. And then you're going to have a lot of fat going around in the blood, which is a little bit wild. It's not sort of processed efficiently. And then you get more fat buildup in the arteries, which leads to cardiovascular disease.
Well, that was a pretty comprehensive answer. Thank you very much, Thomas. So, Dr. Barak, my question for you is one that I had read about when I was doing my my own research on omega-7, and that is, what do you recall? It was an animal study. I'd like you to comment on it if you recall it. It's the effect on EPA and DHA bioavailability when the omega-7 was supplemented at the same time. Do you recall that?
Yeah. So it's actually an interesting thing, and also I think the TERS is also considering that to even make EPA POA kind of together, kind of a product to boost the beneficial effects. Because I think the matter of fact, EPA has additional, like, it's all these fatty acids, once in, it's changing to different things. Some act as a signal molecules, some change to other kind of fatty acids. And matter of fact, when you supply POA, the EPA levels, DHA levels also goes high. And we don't know the exact mechanism, but that's also happened in human as well. That 2014 study, people, when they take, we don't, because it's not a direct conversion. There's an elongation happens, but it should be much more than that. I think
It seems like it's improving bioavailability in some way.
Yeah, it is. It has to be, because it affects phospholipid kind of dynamics. It affects cell membrane integration of these other fatty acids. We just don't know exactly, but it increases the amount and bioavailability of EPA and DHA. And so I think it's fascinating. And there are different benefits, right? The EPA switch to thromboxane A2, that is antiplatelet, and if it's like an aspirin, and if you have coronary artery disease, and it decreases the event of thrombus happening on top of your plaque, that leads to heart attack or stroke. I mean, all these studies came, and even more than cholesterol or TG lowering effect, there's this kind of very dramatic different type of effects happens, either kind of transdifferentiation, maybe that's the different things, or affecting other pathways, became pathological in a setting of like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and things like that. And it's a fascinating field. Lots of things to learn.
Yeah, and it just underscores for me the importance of a balance between the different omegas. So thank you for that. So, Dr. Tobin, here's my question for you. So I was interested, and I liked your sort of explanation of specific omega-9 and 11 being the sister molecules, if you will, of EPA and DHA. But if somebody asked me, where can I get omega-9s from? Where can I get omega-6s? Where can I get omega-3s? I could tell them what some of the dietary sources are. But I actually don't know off the top of my head about dietary sources of omega-11. Is that fish? What are the sources of that?
Yeah, it is fish. So we can't make it ourselves. I think the desaturases stop at 9. So we can make the omega-9, but we can't make omega-11. So it's not in plants, but it's in marine. It's from marine sources. If the fish are making it themselves or they're eating it like they eat the omega-3, I'm not 100% sure.
So I'm just wondering, because I go out for sushi like once a week, and I'm wondering if there's a specific fish I should be enjoying more than another.
Well, it's very high in herring and mackerel.
Oh, yeah, herring's not a big sushi fish, but yes, very good.
No,
I may have to have that one cooked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's quite nice cooked or pickled, but I'm not sure.
I've tried pickled herring before, but can't say I was a huge fan. But
no, I actually like, because it's quite big in Scandinavia, but I think maybe it's easier to take our oil than to take it.
Probably. I imagine it is.
I'll take the supplement. Thank you.
Yeah.
On that one.
So your turn, Bill. If you've got any questions.
I just had one question for anybody here, and it's been touched on by all of you. But as we said, omega-9, the body can synthesize. So when we're putting this in the context of balance, whether it's diet and supplementation is part of the diet. So if you're taking a fish oil supplement, a 369 or something like that, um, isn't it possible? And again, nine, we were talking about, Thomas, you were talking about for skin health, right? So we're talking about that, and your body can synthesize that. So can't you upregulate production of omega 9 in the body by supplementing with the omega 3s 6, or is there a direct connection in seeing that kind of correlation there?
So that was it was actually Derek that was talking about omega 9, and I actually had the same question. Actually, I was interested as well because you did say that because we can make it, and is that then that omega 9 is made from EPA and DHA? Because then that would think like, well, we're already not getting enough EPA DHA, so then we're getting even less of omega 9, or does it work the other way around?
I think actually, although I'm a bit on thin ice to be honest, I think actually it's coming from C18 omega 9. It's being extended, so it's actually an oleic acid. Whether or not eating a lot is enough, it's always a bit difficult because the conversion rates in our bodies aren't particularly efficient. I mean, as you know, EPA and DHA is made in our bodies, but very poorly from Arla, and therefore we eat it. It might be, I think the fact that we get effects suggests that eating it is boosting our levels more than our bodies are creating. But I don't have a biochemical answer to say that, this percentage or there's quite a lot of interaction between even EPA, DHA, right? If you eat DHA, it can be retroconverted to EPA and it can influence the conversion rates of ALA. So it's actually quite complex. But what seems to be, I don't know if the others agree with me, but by just eating a fair amount in a supplement, you kind of push through these subtle changes in your body. So the net effect is an increase in omega-3 index. And I think the same is happening with the 911. By pushing through a high amount, you're sort of overdosing, as it were, and creating an effect. But that's my...
And it's also hard to kind of just assume that when you give precursor, it's going to change to that thing. Because even if you think about POA, it happens like palmitic acid become palmitoleic acid. That's the step. But if you look at the body, if you kind of put a signature on palmitoleic acid, it's not happening from most, like when you give palmitic acid, it's not switching to palmitoleic acid. But when you give sugar, that make that conversion more. So what is actual like accelerator of those kind of synthesis in the body is not very straightforward. It's a matter of fact, it's very complex. And when you give the other ingredients, they go all over the place. Like they go and sit in cell membranes. Some stay freeform. Some became triglycerides. Some became like in different organs. Some trap in somewhere else. Then it's hard to kind of assume when you give something else that it's going to increase the synthesis of that omega.
These are good. These are excellent points about the conversion. I years ago, before there was algae sources of omegas, I used to hear some of my vegetarian friends or people I knew who were vegetarians say, "Oh, I get my omega-3s," and they talk about the vegetarian source. And I'm like, "But you're getting alpha-linolenic acid." And yeah, but that converts not very effectively. I mean, the data shows it's a pretty low rate of conversion. So you're really not getting, not that ALA doesn't have some benefits on its own, but if you're looking for the EPA, DHA benefits, you're not really going to get those in any meaningful way from consuming ALA. So I appreciate the fact that you gentlemen are mentioning that conversion of one fatty acid to another isn't a perfect conversion, and don't depend on that.
It's actually a bit of a shame.
I think,
sorry, Derek.
These NIH studies I talked about, they found a dose response in the LC-MUFA, and their conclusion was the lower dose wasn't working, but the higher dose was. And their conclusion that it was being metabolized at the lower dose. It's just being used as energy. Fat is used as energy, right?
Or used for energy, yeah.
We need there does need kind of a bit of a tsunami to come through and push it through.
I think that's generally my kind of philosophy in that. I mean, I eat a healthy diet, and I don't always do that. And obesity, I blame the TikTok videos of these big hamburger things that they make and show that look so good, but it's like, no, that's bad. I can't eat that. But for me, it's like the supplements are just that. They are supplements, and don't get lost so much in the details on that. But it's going to help you. Okay, so you can't maybe never necessarily measure in this case the conversions of all that, but for sure a supplement with a proper diet. And again, let's not forget the Mediterranean diet. There's tons of epidemiological evidence for that, and that's consuming olive oil. So there's obviously some benefits for cardiovascular health and anti-carcinogenic and all of that. So for again, I think it's just a matter. The take-home message I think for everybody is just like, all right. I need to be taking this in my diet and also in supplement, and I probably will be better off by not doing that. So.
Right, and with an emphasis on so in the diet, you definitely need the good diet as a source of these nutrients. If you look at the research that's being done, the human clinical research, and you see a very specific amount of a very specific fatty acid is given, and you have a very specific result, then my recommendation is if you're looking for that result, you probably should take that supplement in addition to your healthy diet. But to your point, Bill, don't eat a crappy diet and say, well, I'll make up the difference with a supplement. Do both. Good supplement, good both. Diet.
and for me, it's my holy trinity. You need to eat right, which includes taking supplements. You need to exercise. In fact, I'm going to the gym, guys, after we finish this call. And then you spiritual practice. Okay, all meditation. I'm big on that. So anyway, all these things are very important for that. This has been fantastic. I want to close up the show here and move this into just have a brief discussion with everyone, a free-fall discussion about future trends, okay, and innovations. And so that can include anything like sustainability, new extraction methods, novel sources, and also technology, microencapsulation, what kind of things, I think probably the biggest thing about if there's anybody that a consumer doesn't want to take a mega supplement, it's because if it's coming from fish oil, they don't like the burp, right? Yeah, the fish oil burp or whatever. So anyway,
that one annoys me.
Yeah, so
that means the stuff is oxidizing.
I think that's exactly right. So I think there's still some opportunities on the technology side of this for delivery systems to really improve upon that. But maybe each of you could probably comment on where you see future trends going in this particular area in terms of research or even technology, whatever your thoughts are there.
Yeah, let's go in the same order. Start with Thomas, then go to Dr. Brock, then Dr. Tobin.
Yeah.
Thomas, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that consumers are getting more technical. They're definitely getting more. They have much better ability to understand. I mean, we kind of talked about it earlier that people don't really know how the body works and everything. That is true. But I mean, just look at generative AI, right? People used to have Google, right, where you could search what is the best source of omega-3, and then they would get search results that are given to them by someone else. So someone else is writing an article or a blog post promoting their products, get ranked high in Google, and then the consumer sees that product. Now, It's like you can't, for lack of a better word, bullshit anymore, let's say, and make up stuff, because generative AI is gonna cut through all that. It's gonna look at all the information out there, synthesize it, and present it to the consumer, who's then going to become quite knowledgeable quite quickly about any health supplement, for example. So I think we have to ensure that our ingredients are backed by science, that they're properly studied, and we know what we're talking about when it comes to the health benefits. I think, and that's kind of, I'm not even 100% sure how that is even going to change how people actually understand nutrition. I mean, I'm a nutritionist, and I think that people are going to they might not understand how the body works, but they're going to have access to very specific, very detailed information very fast. And they'll be able to make hyper decisions on that too. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But on the flip side of things, I think people want health benefits. The omega-3 industry it's very complicated. As we've had these discussions here, I mean, you can see it's so complicated. Even just going one level down from omega-3s to the types of omega-3s like EPA and DHA, and then further down to all the kind of benefits and conflicting sort of theories on things. I think that consumers want benefits, and if we sort of lead with health benefits of certain products or certain sources, it's going to be the way to go, I think.
Very good. I agree.
All right, Dr. Barak.
That's me. So I think it's where I see this is, it's very hard to kind of understand which fatty acids or which product is doing what. So I think, and the current problems of, in the entire world, this complex oils, I think it's, as a nutrition, it helps. But I think now everybody has a very specific thing in mind that they want to fix. And it's very hard to do research if something has like 20 different ingredients. I think the way it goes is really picking one thing and just say this does this and taking this amount for this thing. So it's really the personalized wellness, not even medicine, like personalized wellness is sit on, like, this is true for NADs, this is true for antioxidants, all these things. It has to be like one pure product, and we need to know where it reaches. Like, I don't know how it's going to be possible, but we will know what happens when I take this pill, where it goes, what it does, how it does, and then like in what kind of level. And then you kind of have a certain panel, and it will tell you you're missing of this particular things, like these 3 things that you will take, but not that one. I think I see that at some point, rather than just giving, a complex fish oil, which is great now for, overall nutrition. But if we talk about future, I think it's going to be very particular for every and each of the people.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I have a comment when we're done because of something I'm working on, Thomas, and you'll appreciate. So, Derek, what's your thoughts on the future of omega fatty acids here?
Yeah, it's a difficult question as well. I think Thomas's point is super interesting because I agree. And but you also have TikTok. You also have these crazy information. So we live in a world of hyper information and hyper disinformation. So how that's all going to pan out, I have no idea. It could go either way.
It's a minefield.
It's a minefield. I see sort of on a concrete level, I see the preterm use of omega-3 in preterm births is something which has come into the guidelines in Australia. I think Europe Lipids Association. I don't think it's come to the US yet, but that's come like a little bit of a wave over the community over the last few years, despite years of research. But it's really hit. It's a sort of a small mini trend, if you like. I think the fatty acids, they're continuously being asked. We're continuously being asked for higher and higher concentrations. I don't think people kind of understand that 100 is the maximum. I'm sure we're going to be asked to provide 120. So.
Yeah. Oh, that goes back to the more is better thing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then maybe alternative. I don't know. I mean, gummies is just one thing where the concentration is starting to increase. We have a company in Norway, Vitix, which does the highest concentration of getting. It's not easy to get oils into these kind of alternative formulations without them smelling or going off, but
they're good.
There's more advances. They're very good.
They're good. I tried them recently, actually. Yeah, really impressed, because I remember actually trying them back in Expo West. I think it was my first year at Akbar, 7 years ago, and I remember trying them, and I was like, God, these are never going to work. And then I tried them on my desk the other day, and I was like, wow, yeah, they're actually pretty good, and a really nice, really great dose of EPA DHA in them as well. It's really fantastic. Yeah.
So this is this advance in alternative forms that are sort of good for kids and good for people that don't want to swallow. Yeah. So, I think that's. I don't.
Gene, what are your thoughts on the future? Then I'll share mine, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Well, I think what I see a lot out there is delivery systems that are being touted for all kinds of different nutraceuticals, whether it's microencapsulation or some other delivery system. I've seen omega-3s that are bonded with lysine, and they've done some bioavailability research. I see all different kinds of things of this nature. And I think that one of the things we're going to see and is technologies to improve bioavailability, but we're going to have to look very, very carefully at those technologies to see if it's real or if it's marketing science. So, but I think that's an area that we're going to see more on.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, it's Thomas, you've said it, and actually, and Furkan, you've talked about it, about the future and technology and its role there, and Derek, you talked about it as well. So, so let me give you a partial reveal of what I'm working on in my fourth venture that I'm going to launch here in 2025. Now, I've had previous ventures where I've launched new products into the industry, launched at Expo, that kind of thing, my own company products I've developed. But my next venture is nutraceuticals.ai, which is smart nutrition unlocked for you. So it is a technology play in the industry, and it's going to address the biggest problem for consumers that has been there historically. And they ask all the time, what product do I take for this for me? So you could say it's in personalized nutrition, but I don't even want to put it in that umbrella because this is so much more advanced than that. We're going to leverage AI technology. We're in the middle of developing the prototype right now. And the bottom line is it'll go to consumers in a form that they can, based on their profile. And I see also the future of this with wearables being in conjunction with that and getting very specific, like you're talking about, Furkan. Very challenging. I don't know how we're going to do that part, but for sure we can screen the available products on the market that are based on the science. So you already said it, Thomas. If you're not doing the science, you're not going to be able to get away with that stuff anymore. Yeah, we do have the bad actors that do that in our industry, but my goal is to basically through our app and our technology that we're doing is only show the results and a rating system of the products that really have the science to back up their claims. And so you forget about trying to change the regulations in Washington, D.C. They'll never happen. And forget about trying to eliminate bad actors and fighting all the TikTok social media influencers who are telling bad advice all the time. This eliminates all of that. It's an indirect approach that's going to actually create great value for the consumers. So I'm super excited about it, guys. So I'm glad that you said that because it kind of led me to be able to do a little intro here and a partial reveal for that. So that's the future, guys.
Is that going to be are you developing, what's the AI based on? Is it based on a large, like an LLM, is it based on ChatGPT
LLM, yeah.
or kind of, is it based on?
No, it's more advanced than that. We've got a lot to develop in the back end, and Gene's going to be part of our scientific team that's going to work with that. And it's not just going to be some app we can put out there, and it's not a pay for play either, guys. So if your ingredients or products don't make the cut, they're going to get the rating they're going to get. So it's not going to be, some people are not going to like what I'm going to do, and some people are going to love it. So it's
but at the end of the day, the consumer is going to benefit because there's all of those claims, all the crazy stuff out there. I always call it real science versus marketing science. Just eliminates any of the claims that don't have science to support it, period.
Yeah.
So what recommendations are real.
I mean, that's very important, and it's a big emphasis now. It's in the medicine side as well. And it's actually all this, AHA, American College of Cardiology, they're going against actually this in a very strong way. I think it's going to be very important to have a tool that really kind of separate things, which is really backed by science, which is really, great marketing, which it's also discourage people moving forward. They spend a lot of time.
And I see this, I see this as something that clinicians can utilize too to help keep them on track with the right kinds of recommendations. When their patients come and say, "Hey, I saw this thing on TikTok, or I read this thing, or whatever," is that real?
Yeah. It would be great because clinician doesn't have much time to go through each of them. There become a million different things around. You just try to get away with it, but it's not helping the patient. Patient has a question that I need a tool to actually easily find which is good or bad or ugly, I think it would be perfect.
Well, you're actually keying in on one of our target markets, and it is clinicians and medical doctors who get asked all the time. And you're right; they don't have time to keep up on all the science and every ingredient. It's impossible. Nobody can do that. I mean, even G and I are subject matter experts. We can't keep up on all the science, and some of the stuff you guys have talked about is new to us. So for me, this is going to be, and it's a lot of work, guys. It's going to be a challenge to develop. it's not as simple as and I've already actually done surveys with consumers already, so I've already gotten validated feedback from them that they would love to have something like this. And for sure, I know doctors would love to have this as well, have this as a tool. And again, it's going to be a tool to help utilize that. So anyway, that's all I'll say about that. That's the future, and it's exciting, I think. And this has been an awesome show, guys. I think,
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's been really great, and I'm for sure. I've convinced myself, Gene, that we're going to do more of these Bioactive Breakdown series. In the series, I think it's going to be fun to do this, and other ingredients, botanicals, that sort of thing. So appreciate you guys being the guinea pigs for the first one. And again, I like the idea of coming back, revisiting when you guys have updates on research. Just stay in contact with Gene and I and that, and then we can do a part 2, so to speak, and do that. I think might be useful as well.
Thanks for having us. It was great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
And Gene, you got any last comments? If not,
No, I loved this format. I look forward to doing more of it. And again, to thank our guests for joining us. And for any of you gentlemen who are going to be at Supply Side, I look forward to maybe having a chance to meet you in person. And any of our listeners who are listening to this, if you hear this before Supply Side, I'll be at booth 6017 most of the time. So feel free to stop by and say hello.
And I'm going to put that, don't anybody disconnect, just stay on here until we're finished. But I'm going to, when we finish post-production on this episode, I know we're streaming live right now, but after post-production, we'll put some links for each of the companies and also where you guys are going to be at Supply Side, so everybody can go visit with you as well.
Oh, and just don't, to further to Bill's point, don't X out until we tell you to, otherwise we lose everything that you did.
All right, so with that, I'm going to take us out with our usual outro here.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Hold on. Well, maybe I am.